All right. And we are live. Hello, everyone. Let me check settings really fast. And we'll go ahead and get started. I appreciate your patience, you guys. I know we're running a few minutes late. Video looks good. Audio looks good. Welcome, you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining for a Saturday edition of our Q&As. I'm going to give it just a moment longer to allow people to come on in, get notified, get settled. But we will jump in here in just a second. I already got a number of questions, which is great. Hello, Serene. Hello, Becca. Hello, Anna. Flavia, JT. Welcome, you guys. Hey, John. You made it. Made it. Yay. Awesome, awesome. Looks good. We should go ahead and jump on in. So like I said, I know we're running a few minutes behind. My apologies for that. Let's just go ahead and get started. Shall we? We already got a number of questions, number of people here. That number's gonna inevitably grow. So again, welcome you guys. Thank you so much for being here for a Saturday edition of live Q&As where we just hang out, we talk about the law, talk about manifestation, and I answer questions. So ideally, hopefully, my aim, as always, is so that you have the best understanding, be able to take these teachings and apply them in your life so that you can see the reality that you desire to see. I know we usually go live on Sundays, so my apologies for switching it up this week. We will be resuming normal schedule starting next week. Tomorrow, just no way I'm going to be able to make it work, so I figure best to come on today than not at all. And just a couple quick things to announce before we jump in. Number one, my apologies. I know it has been a long time since I released a video, but I do have a new video coming out tomorrow, so keep eyes out for that. And lastly, as far as resources go, if you're interested in working together or anything of the sort, I've got links to all of that down below, my coaching programs, my workshops, and masterclasses. The one-on-one coaching waitlist was only open for maybe 2 hours until I had to close that. But I do, if you were not able to get in, I apologize, but I do have my coaching program, Mindset Mastery program, coming up. Registration is going to be opening for that next week. So definitely check down the description box if you want more information, how to sign up, and all of that sort. So without further ado, all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. Hey, Missy, I am 30 and I wish to have a baby with my SP. We're not a couple yet, but things are going very well. How do I not stress about time because of my age? Oh, good question. I mean, I know that this can feel challenging, but number one, and most importantly, that's societal conditioning. This idea that if we don't have a baby by 35, then we're doomed, or this doomer outlook, and it's a lot of noise. It's a lot of noise. Again, we are conditioned to believe that at a certain point you're not going to be able to have kids, which is just inherently not true. I mean, more so now than any other time in history, women are having children in their late 30s, early 40s without issue. So, maybe perhaps reading up some success stories may help to calm some of those fears, may help to quell some of those fears. Just reading about other people's experiences, being just fine, going through everything just fine. But the other part of that would be, as far as the law is concerned, continue to test the law. Continue to test the law and continue to prove to yourself that ultimately you are the one who is the operant power here, right? So it's what you say goes. Yeah. But rest assured, do not buy into the societal conditioning. Oh, P, you've got a really good question. I actually need to make a video about this. How to make sure I am imagining if I have a problem with maladaptive daydreaming. It also feels good and real, but it doesn't manifest, of course. Can I use daydreaming to manifest things into my life? Good question. So, daydreaming versus living in the end versus sats. Another way that it's sort of explained is thinking of something versus thinking from something. But I mean, essentially, there's two differences that I can note when it comes to daydreaming versus imagining the wish fulfilled, living in the end. Number one is intent. Maladaptive daydreaming, you tend to it's tend to be more used as an escapism, a coping mechanism, and there's still a degree of, even if it's seems realistic, it's not real. Like we still have that degree of this is a fantasy, right? The 3D is the real world still, and this is all just fantasy. Whereas when we are imagining going to the end, when we are living in the end, the idea is to experience it as if it were real for us. That being the key word. I talk about it in the video that I made recently, How I Imagine. The title of it is How I Imagine, or How to Occupy a State of Consciousness. If you haven't seen that video, I would check that one out. I kind of walk through a bit more detail of differentiating the, daydreaming or fantasizing versus living in the end. So, number one is intent. Like when living in the end, we are going somewhere, we are experiencing something, not, it's not an escape. It's not an escapism. It's not to cope or deal with the unwanted 3D circumstances. But there's also, with living in the end, there's that degree of this is an experience I am having, right? If I'm identifying with my inner world, if I'm identifying with I am, then this is an experience that I am having. I hope that makes sense. Because I know people get really confused about the whole thinking of versus thinking from. Check out the video that I made talking about how I imagine. And I sort of break it down in more detail there. But I hope that makes sense. Happy Saturday, Anna. Hi, Missy. I had a lucid dream in which my crush asked me out. It felt so real. We held hands. I could feel his skin and the warmth of his hand. Do lucid dreams impress the mind the same as visualizing? Good question. Yeah, lucid dreams are wild. Lucid dreams are absolutely wild. And I mean, I've absolutely seen dreams that I've had come to fruition in the 3D. That has been a personal experience of mine. I mean, I guess the question I would ask you is, does it feel real, or does it feel like this thing happened? Or does it feel like you may be questioning or wondering, or no, that was just a dream? something like that. Absolutely. Because if the feeling is, this is done for me, then I would say that lasted an impression, that left an impression subconsciously, if that makes sense. Yeah, note your reactions going forward. Thank you for the super chat, John. I'm prepared to start my own landscaping business soon and wondered if you have advice for getting over what Bob Proctor called the terror barrier. How to behave in the 3D. How to deal with the terror barrier. I mean, first off, congratulations on your business. That is awesome. How to behave in the 3D? Is that right? I'm trying to remember what the terror barrier. It's been years since I've studied Bob Proctor or read anything from him. But I'm guessing the question is, how do we deal with the 3D and things in the 3D that may be not ideal? And correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't recall what exactly he said about that. Basically, how we deal with the 3D is we go about our day as we normally would. If something happens that is not ideal, if something shows up in a way that pisses us off or is, makes us sad or upset, we want to make sure to revise it. We want to make sure to, number one, don't interact with it to the best of your ability. We don't want to feed into it. We don't want to fight with the mirror effectively. But if it's something that feels, overwhelming or something that really left an impression on us that day, or something that just didn't feel good, I absolutely would make sure to revise it before bed. And that's a habit that we should really want to practice getting into anyways, if not already doing so. Terror barrier equals severe resistance. Oh. How do we deal with resistance in the 3D? We're basically looking at resistance. We're noting it as feedback. If we have resistance to something, if there is notable disconnect, it's just feedback that there's an assumption or a belief that we have that's in contrast to what we desire, right? That's where the pushback comes in. That's where that, little inner critic in the back of the mind comes in and tries to fight with us. It's because what we believe and assume is in contrast with what we desire. So it feels like we're fighting with ourselves. Number one, don't try to engage and fight with that little voice in the back of the head. Don't take the bait. Don't do it. We can observe it. We can be aware of this resistance without engaging with it, without trying to fight it. That's a reflex that we want to be mindful of, because the first instinct might be to try to push back against that resistance. I don't recommend doing that. Instead, that's just showing us what may still be living in consciousness, that's these beliefs and assumptions may still be with us in consciousness. We may still have attachment to these beliefs and assumptions that are in contrast with our desire. That's all that means, right? I hope I'm understanding your question correctly, John. Yeah, but don't fight with it. Don't try to engage with it. Like, nothing like that. It's just feedback. Just feedback. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you. Happy mind affirmations. Hi, Missy. How can manifestation help us when we grieve for someone we love so much and was so important to us who just passed away? I tried revision, but I still feel extremely sad. Thank you. Oh. I'm my condolences first and foremost. Even if we have the conscious understanding about death and the fact that death, as we may know it or perceive it or used to perceive it, is not an actual thing, even though we don't actually die in the sense that we may have used to believe, it can still be an incredibly painful process. So if you need to grieve, if you are, finding yourself feeling a lot of, like, let yourself feel the emotions, let yourself grieve, let yourself go through whatever you might need to go through. There's absolutely no shame in that. And I know grief is a journey in and of itself. Because if it might be that if trying to revise, but there's still a lot of things that you're feeling, and just make sure you're not trying to suppress anything is what I'm trying to say. Because I know it can still feel like a great loss, even if we do have, again, that knowledge and understanding. Yeah, it doesn't always make it easier per se. I'd say let yourself feel whatever you need to feel right now. Once you do reach a place where you feel a bit not better, or not good, but maybe a bit more relaxed or a bit more calm, or maybe the emotions are not as intense, maybe what you're feeling is not as intense, then go in with revision, then go in with imagining, seeing them or seeing a different outcome, whatever that might be. Yeah. My condolences again, sincerely. Thank you for the super chat, Rowena. Thank you. Oh, you have a good question too. Hi, your content is thank you. You make me calm. So I always hear persist, but isn't that obsessing too? And how do you really deal with manifesting when your heart is aching so much and you cry a lot? Aw. Yeah. And this is a really good question because unfortunately, a lot of the times when we hear persist, especially for people that are new into these teachings, they hear persist and they think keep pushing yourself, and it becomes almost like this battle that we fight, this internal battle that takes place. That's not what persistence means. That's not what persistent, to be clear. In the context of the law, the context of conscious manifestation, persistence just means that we don't want to just give up, right? If we fall out of the state of the wish fulfilled, say we, suffer ego backlash, we are, maybe one day we're feeling really good, and the next day we notice that we're feeling terrible and we're crying and we're emotional. Persistence just means, don't throw in the towel completely. Don't, like, let yourself have a moment. If you need to have a moment, let yourself, you know, experience whatever. Like, if you need to cry, okay, let yourself cry. It's okay, right? But then, once we are feeling better, once we've sort of maybe processed and are doing better, maybe we're feeling a bit more calm, move back to the wish fulfilled, right? So it's just what persistence in 70 times 7 means is just we do not want to give up and just accept the old outcomes and go back to before we knew about this, and we were, victim to circumstance, and we didn't know that we were the operant power. We were still very much in the belief that, there's power and forces outside of us. we don't want to go back to that, right? That's what persistence means. Understanding that occupying a new state of consciousness may take moving back into that state a handful of times before it becomes a more dominant state for us, right? It does not mean that you need to keep forcing yourself and pushing and pushing and pushing and obsessing, like trying to force yourself to keep going even if you're against a wall of resistance. No, that's not what that means. To be clear. And I'm really glad you asked that question because that's such an important one. And how do you deal with manifesting when your heart is aching so much and you cry a lot? I mean, in that moment, when you feel very sad and your heart is aching and you feel like crying, let yourself cry. It's gonna feel incredibly challenging to imagine something lovely and happy and, birds and flowers and rainbows when we're feeling really sad. Like in that moment, in that state, it's going to feel really challenging for us to just make that kind of a leap. I'm not saying it's not possible, but for many people, most I would argue, it's going to feel difficult to do so. So the idea is first, if you need to cry, let yourself cry. If you need to get it out, get it out. And then once you are feeling a bit better, once you've let it out, once you've processed and you're feeling calmer and you're feeling better, from that more neutral state, once you're able to get yourself more relaxed, then go back to the end, then go back to imagination and go into the end. I hope that makes sense. Going back up. Where was I? How to shift attention if I keep thinking about my SP all the time? Is that a problem? Good question. Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what exactly those thoughts are. It's not a problem to have your SP come to mind. Like that in and of itself is not an issue. It's not that you don't ever think about this person, obviously, but what kind of thoughts? I guess are these thoughts coming up? Are they from the place of already being together, or imagining what it is like being with this person, or not? Yeah, that's going to be a big distinction. How to shift our attention? Practice. Practice. And then that's why one of the things that I recommend is getting into a meditation practice, specifically something like a focused attention meditation. That's going to help to train your mind, naturally discipline your mind to be very direct and intentional with the attention of the mind. It just helps to reel in the monkey mind, basically. You guys are a trip. You always crack me up. Hi, Missy. Been trying to manifest my SP, but an old SP from 19 years ago contacted me and we met. He's not the SP I want. What could that mean? Also, having less intrusive thoughts about the breakup slash sadness. Good. Well, to the last part, yeah, that's good. We want to ideally notice less intrusive thoughts. So that's really good to hear. This is actually something that's more common than a lot of people might realize. When your aim is to manifest a specific person, but somebody else from your past comes in instead, or somebody else tries to reach out and connect with you, this actually happens quite frequently. I wouldn't say it's a bad thing by any means. because in a lot of ways, it means that you are more occupying a state of loved and desirable, right? Clearly that is, you know, the self concept around relationships is improving. Uh, so I guess the thing that we want to ask ourselves is, what are my thoughts and beliefs and assumptions about my specific person? Am I still, am I still holding on to this old story when it comes to my specific person, right? That's usually where that comes from. We're doing better. Like, our self concept is growing in terms of, feeling loved and chosen and prioritized, but we may still have an attachment to the old story when it comes to our specific person, or we may believe that our specific person isn't going to reach out to us, or whatever, anything like. So just note what the assumptions are that you have around your SP. And if any of the assumptions that you currently have about your SP are not ideal, that's what we want to begin to change. Yeah. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you, TWS. I know you say you have to believe/have faith. Does this have to be right away, or can you build faith over time? Good question. I mean, you don't. To be clear, you don't have to believe in the law per se. The law's working whether we believe it is or we don't, right? The law's always working. It's going to be very helpful for us to have faith, no doubt. But I wouldn't say that we have to have it as a requirement. No. And absolutely, it for a lot of people, it's probably going to build over time. Yeah. I would argue for most, it's going to be a thing that builds over time. Of course, everybody's different, but yeah, that's totally fine. It's totally fine. If we don't have 1,000% faith and conviction at first, I mean, I don't think anybody does initially, so you're totally good. After you did your massive revision on your past, did you notice any immediate effects? After doing some, I feel more peaceful and free. Also, how do you personally imagine something never happening? Good questions. I'm first, yes. Yes. I noticed almost immediately a massive internal shift. The more that I continued to revise from the past events that I had listed, I just felt more, very similar to what you described there. I felt more calm. I felt more at peace. I felt less anxiety. I felt less attachment to these old ideas. I had less intrusive thoughts. Absolutely. Absolutely. I noticed a difference. Even before the 3D changed, even before I noticed anything external, I certainly noticed a lot of internal shifting happening. What was the... How do you personally imagine something never happening? So how do you erase an event? One thing that I did that personally worked for me and I found very helpful, because I kind of struggled with the same thing. I didn't know, like, how do I imagine something never happened? I would literally, like, I would bring up the event or some, whatever it was in my mind, and I would literally, like, in my brain, take an eraser to it, like I was scrubbing it out, as in I was erasing the memory, like quite literally in imagination. And that really helped me. Like, I noticed almost immediately that the memory was much more spotty, much more, like, there were definite pieces missing. Like, I could tell that it was quite literally erasing from my memory bank. It was really cool to see. So try that one if you haven't yet. Thank you for the super chat, Ivana. I'm so sorry. I did not get a notification for that. How can I lucid dream instantly? Good question. So there are techniques and methods that you can begin practicing to help induce lucid dreaming. I'm not sure if lucid dreaming is something that comes more naturally to you, if you have them often, if you've had them before, or maybe not at all. Um, if you haven't yet or are not familiar with, I would get familiar with SATs. I would practice imagining in the drowsy state. I would practice going deeper into the drowsy state. And just becoming more familiar with that doorway between consciousness and sleep. That's going to be a big one. Yeah, it may take a little bit of practice, but you can absolutely induce a lucid dream at any time. Practice getting familiar with SATs. That's going to help you immensely. Hi, Missy. What do you think about Dr. Joa Spence's work? I like him. I mean, he's effectively saying the same. It's essentially Neville's teaching. Well, it's not really Neville's teachings because these teachings are thousands of years old, right? I don't want to make it sound like Neville patented them or anything like that, but he's effectively teaching the same thing, just a more modern approach to it. And maybe explaining it with more of the scientific background for those rational-minded people, those left-brain people. I know it can be very helpful. Joe Dispenza's work can be very helpful for them. But yeah, I like him. A lot of people, I love some of his meditations. A lot of people love his meditations. Yeah. Hello from beautiful Napa Valley. Kelly, hello. You're not far from me at all, girl. Maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours from Napa Valley tops. That is so cool. What if my astrology reading absolutely denies any chance of getting back with my SP? I would dismiss that. If you haven't yet, I would check out Neville's lecture on the Pearl of Great Price. I also made a video about the Pearl of Great Price if that might be more helpful. But effectively, one of the things that we ultimately are going to want to do at some point on this journey is give up this idea that there's an external force that has power or predicting abilities over us, because that's not a thing. So regardless of what the astrology says, regardless of what the tarot cards say, regardless of what the tea leaves say, none of that matters. None of that matters. In fact, all of that is just reflection of your dominant state of consciousness anyway. So perhaps you may have the belief that the two of you are not going to be able to get back together, or maybe the belief is that it's not going to be able to work. And the astrology reading is going to reflect that, right? But that's not set in stone. Nothing is ever set in stone, to be clear. Definitely check out The Pearl of Great Price. Hello, Missy. How would I know if my revision has worked in the 3D, like I am revising my college experience and feel different and know what happened? Uh, and know what happened or did not happen? Is this proof it worked? So, how do we know our revision has worked in the 3D? I mean, inevitably, you will get some sort of feedback that shows you, right? Something will happen to show you that your revision has worked, so to speak. Um, I couldn't tell you when that happens. I couldn't tell you what exactly that looks like. But the way that we can gauge if it's working for us or not is how we are feeling about the memory or the event that happened. Are we still identifying and resonating with the old story, or is it now the new revised memory that comes up for us naturally? And that's what we are identifying with, right? I hope that makes sense. Um, because if it feels like you are more identifying with the revised act, the 3D will shape and follow. Where was I? Hi, Missy. I know it's done with my SB. I have no worries. I only worry that I have no worries. But now I just want that pattern to stop and just be present until 3D arrives. Absolutely. Absolutely. So your only worry is that you don't have worries? What, like it's and yeah, I know it might not be we might not be used to not worrying all the time. If it's something that if before we were constantly worrying about things and now we're no longer doing that, it can take some getting used to. Yeah. But I would say that's fantastic indication. Sorry, chat's moving around a little bit. Oh, I manifested a guy with SATs. He seemed to be great, and he just ghosted. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, number one, I would revise that. I would revise the incident. Um, and we want to be observing what's taking place in 3D, the 3D circumstances, and more importantly, our reactions to them to kind of gauge like what way may still have as an assumption, right? Do we still hold the assumption that people ghost me, that people always leave me. Are these still beliefs that, may be present in consciousness, right? So always, always, always take the 3D circumstances as feedback. And even more importantly, our reactions to them as feedback, letting you know what state of consciousness you dominantly occupy, what you might believe and assume to be true. But regardless, you can change it. You can always change it. You can revise it. You can imagine as if nothing of the sort happened. And I would. I absolutely would. Yeah. Nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible. Yes, you can manifest your SP no matter what. No matter what. To be clear. Even if the circumstances seem impossible to overcome, that's not an actual thing. Not an actual thing. Northwest Wind, hello, sir. What was your routine for when you let go of SP focus and were focusing on unconditional love? I remember you imagined light and also just formless love. I am curious of your routine back then. Good question. When I turned my attention from SP onto myself, yeah. One of the things that I did, which I believe I've talked about in a video, I don't remember the name of the title or anything like that, but one of the things myself as knowing golden light goddess, feeling completely whole, completely vast, abundant. It was incredible. The feeling was absolutely incredible. It's hard to even put it into words. And love, it felt like unconditional love. I did a lot of the I am meditation, a lot of self-inquiry, certainly. Basically, going past all of the conditions of self, the conceptions of self, and just being as awareness, as unconditioned consciousness, which is unconditional love, because that's who we actually and really are, right? I imagined scenes where people were congratulating me, people were telling me, people were confirming the traits and conceptions that I wanted to embody, right? So I was experiencing myself as the version of me that I desired to be, as somebody who was more confident, as somebody who felt secure and safe within herself. I imagine the things that would naturally imply that to be truth, if that makes sense. And of course, a lot of revision. A lot of revision. Thank you for the super chat. Hi, Missy. Do you have a video that addresses how to face the 3D while working a job in which you must rely on coworkers to help assist you with client requests, and they are not always successful or on time? Upset. Aw. Aw. I am so sorry about that. I do have a couple videos that go into how to navigate the 3D when things are undesirable, right? Like how to maintain the state of consciousness, the ideal state of consciousness, despite 3D circumstances that may be shitty and not ideal. Yeah, if you go into the search bar and just type, Missy Renee, how to deal with the 3D or overcoming 3D challenges, a few videos should pop up to help you to address the dealing with events that are not great. Also, everybody is you pushed out. I've made a couple videos on the concept of everyone is you pushed out. If that's something that maybe haven't heard about before or not very familiar with, definitely make sure to watch those videos as well. But it's just effectively what we want to start doing is in this case, in this circumstance that you're describing, we want to imagine that your coworkers, the people that you're working with and relying on, are people that you know you can rely on, right? So our assumption about this person is what we're ultimately changing. Not trying to change the person themselves, we're trying to change our assumption about this person. So instead of, my coworkers always drop the ball and then clients are unhappy and I get yelled at, it's, my coworkers are always, you know, always got my back. They're always on top of it. We're a great team. I feel supported. That sort of thing is what we want to begin to imagine. But definitely check out a few of the videos that I mentioned on dealing with 3D obstacles and everyone is she pushed out. Trying to find my spots there, guys. Oh my God, Crystal, that's awesome. Oh, chat's jumping again. I got remarried and started over. I am 43 with a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old that were both born healthy at home in bed with my husband catching them. A plus husband right there. And see? Yeah. At 30, you got plenty of time. Plenty of time. No stress. Thank you for sharing that, Crystal. That's awesome. Hi, Missy. I want to use the law to improve my self-esteem, like feeling prettier, smarter, more worthy, etc. I have only used SATs in the past to manifest tangible things. Any tips? Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, because the beauty of the law is that it doesn't just work for tangible things. It works for everything, changing aspects of our character, um, changing the conceptions of ourselves, right? Um, so I guess an example would be, or a question that I would have and pose to you is, what would be instances or circumstances that would imply that you are feeling prettier, smarter, more worthy? You could imagine a conversation with somebody where they're telling you as much, right? You can imagine that you won a contest, got a scholarship, things that imply that you are, whatever it is that you want to feel. And maybe even trying something like the lullaby method, which is not focused on like a specific scene for and getting something in the 3D, but is more about how we desire to feel and encapsulating that. I hope I'm making sense. But what would be some things that would imply that you are somebody who feels beautiful, somebody who feels, worthy, intelligent, whatever that looks like. Get clear on that and then go there. Oh, your Sunday lives are my home and safe place, and I hadn't even noticed. How did it happen? Oh, I'm so glad, and thank you for being here. This is a safe place. Absolutely. Where was I? Living in the end, how is that really? Say your end is marriage, then how do you walk around and live day to day that way? It's very confusing. Yeah, no, I know a lot of this can seem very confusing, very out there because it is. It's we're not used to uh, we're not used to thinking and applying these teachings in this way. A lot of the teachings here go directly against everything that we've been taught. So it can naturally feel confusing. As far as living in the end is concerned, it's not that we have to like walk around pretending like we're married. We don't have to try to fake it or anything like that. That's not what that means. Um, as far as what you're doing in the 3D and the day to day, you're going about your day to day. But it's instead having that confidence that what I've imagined, what I've impressed, what I have accepted is what becomes my reality, right? As far as the 3D is concerned. The 3D is a mirror of where we are internally. So if I've imagined, impressed, and accepted this idea of being married, then I'm going to feel confident in that. The idea the idea of being somebody who's married isn't going to feel far-fetched and impossible or far away from me, if that makes sense. It's more about who we are being. This is the art of being. What are we identifying with, identifying as? I hope that helps. But to be clear, this doesn't mean that we have to try to pretend. Not at all. Oh my God, you guys, thank you for the super chat. Dang. Thank you, Caitlin. Hi, Missy. I manifested a new car. Awesome. I stayed in the feeling of having the car of my dreams, trusted, let go of lack, and it came. Here's my question. Part 1 of 2. Oh, where's part 2? Uh-oh. I see a... Okay. Here's my question. My new car is amazing and even better than I imagined, but it's a different color and make than I had in my imagination. Now, I am in a state of wondering if I will get a different SP than I am desiring. Like something better, but not exactly him. I want exactly him. Thoughts? Good question. Good question. So, God knows what it is you desire because God gave you that desire. God put that desire in your heart, right? So if we are experiencing and imagining, that is what is going to become outpictured. What becomes outpictured in 3D is whatsoever we are believing and assuming internally, right? What we are imagining. So I'm trying to go back to your question here. So it was a different color and make than I had in my imagination. Well, but you probably don't have as strong of an attachment to the car than you do your SP. If I had to guess. Right? If I had to guess. I'm just going back over making sure. But it's a different color and make than I had in my imagination. Yeah, it may be that we don't see, like, I've had imaginal acts that I visualized that didn't turn out like carbon copy. Like I've had plenty of instances where that was the case, but not always the case. Like, what came out was essentially, like, the root of what I wanted. It got to the root of what I wanted. Um, Maybe not identically, but when it comes to something like a specific person, yeah. If we imagine an experience of self with that person, it's not going to wind up being somebody else. That's not how the law works. That is a great question, though, and I understand the feeling of unease or wanting to be sure about that, but no. There are some things that we may have a bit leeway for, and when it comes to romance, if we have a specific person, there's probably not going to be a bunch of leeway there. I would not be worried. Thank you, Oscar Laura. Thank you for the super chat. Hi, Missy. I think it's set, but I need help relaxing in the wish fulfilled. I just feel tired from acknowledging my wish is done and make it an easy thing. I think it's set, but I need help relax. Yes. It is so important that we learn the art of relaxation, the art of relaxing ourselves, relaxing our body and relaxing our mind, which sounds so obvious and seems like it would be simple to do, but surprisingly, it can feel more challenging. And we live in such a fast-paced, intense, always going kind of world. We're always plugged in, we're always going a million miles a minute, that it can feel very difficult to relax ourselves. And it sounds like that might be a bit of what's going on here. Like, there may be that you've been trying to push yourself to acknowledge this thing, right? If you're feeling tired from something, that means that there's been an exertion of a lot of effort. It doesn't have to be exhausting. It really doesn't have to be exhausting. That's why we want to try to make sure first that we're in a more relaxed state, and then imagine, right? Getting yourself relaxed first and foremost, and then imagining, and then allowing ourselves to occupy that state internally. Trying to do so when we're feeling very anxious, probably going to feel challenging, probably going to feel exhausting. And that's actually the video that I have coming out tomorrow is talking more about this. And why I talk so much about SATs and helping ourselves to get into a more relaxed state first, meditation, picking up a meditation practice, because I know it can be very difficult to relax in today's age. We don't live in a world where that is the easiest thing to do, but we want to practice doing so. Meditation. That's right, Bubba. Thank you, John. Thank you for the super chat. Would I be breaking the golden rule if I manifested that every man on the planet found my SP and likewise heard with other men? Oh, John. If you manifested that every guy was I don't think you need to go that far out of your way, right? I mean, in your reality, you can do whatever you want. But I think that there's a lot easier ways to go about. Why not instead that your SP finds you and you alone desirable, right? You are too funny. Thank you, Clarity. I love your new username, by the way. Hi, I ran into SP last night. We've been in no contact. I said, hi, how are you? First time we spoke in 3 years. What? I feel good, but still questioning 3D behavior. Oh, wow. 3 years. That's incredible. You feel good, but still questioning 3D behavior. Are you referring to how he showed up in 3D? I mean, if he showed up in any way that was not ideal, if he said anything that was not ideal, I would personally revise that. I would make sure to revise that. I'm questioning 3D because he didn't seem into talking. Yeah, I would revise that. I would revise that and imagine instead that very enthusiastically he was talking and into you and showing up in the way that you wanted to see him show up, right? Revise it to where he asked you out for coffee or for dinner, or this is where we get to go nuts. This is where we get to go anywhere and experience anything in imagination. I wouldn't accept and take with me the undesirable outcome, whatever that was. Like, we don't want to hold on to that 3D outcome if it was not ideal. Mm-mm. All right, let me find my spot. Uh-oh. What did the settings do? Damn it, YouTube. Caroline, I am so sorry if I accidentally did something to your messages. That was not intentional. My bad. You should be good now. All right, where was my spot? Did you utilize inner conversations to connect to unconditional love during the day? I'm using certain mantras. Curious to how you use mental diet to connect to God and stay within that state. Absolutely. Absolutely. Inner conversations is a personal favorite of mine. That's one that I would utilize all the time, especially in the day to day. Inner talking. Inner talking. Um, Certain mantras, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That one has always been a favorite of mine because it's something that I was naturally always doing anyways. And so it was much more easy for me and felt much more natural. It would flow better to just imagine conversations that would imply that would help keep me grounded and rooting in that unconditional love. I would also naturally take more time out of my day to meditate. By and far, the I am meditation and self inquiry are the best ways to connect to that unconditional love. Uh-oh. Oh, Frank, let me take a note about that. I am so sorry, bud. Yeah, let me shoot you a message right after this live. I am so sorry about that. It has been a while since we've connected. We have to do so. Hi, Missy. I've been practicing law of assumption for the past couple of years. I've been trying to take responsibility of my actions. I sometimes feel shame and guilty if I created in my situation. Yeah, yeah, I know. This is something that I think a lot of people can grapple. A lot of people have struggles with sometimes, especially once we do come to the place of acceptance, right? That we are in fact the operant power, that good or bad, the instances that we've encountered have been, you know, are doing effectively. But I mean, to feel shame and guilt is understandable, but doesn't really make sense because we didn't know, right? We had no idea that what we were imagining was what was contributing to the circumstances and events that happened. You see, so it doesn't really make much sense to beat ourselves up. I know we're really good at that typically. We're good at giving ourselves a hard time and being very harsh on ourselves, but we had no idea. There's no way we would have known. So, that was my realization that I came to that helped me to get to a place of forgiveness. Um, complete forgiveness for myself and for everyone. You know, Lord, forgive them for they know not what they do, including ourselves, right? Yeah. Go easy on yourself. Where was the spot? Hey, Missy, I haven't felt like getting into imagination for a while, but I still strongly desire things. How can self concept help me get back into the law? Uh, mm, so I'm a little confused by your question. How can you work on the self concept to get back in the my apologies. I'm a little confused about the question, but I mean, it's okay to take a break if you needed to take a break. That's completely understandable and fine. Um, have to take care of ourselves at the end of the day, ultimately. Um, if you're talking about you're ready to get back into the swing of things, you're ready to sort of come back into imagining the wish fulfilled, or anything like that. First, I would get very, very clear, not just on what you want, but the version of you that has this thing or outcome or whatever it might be, whatever the desire is. Really begin to put yourself in the shoes of that version of you, right? Like, what would the beliefs and assumptions be of the version of you that had your desire and felt like the most natural thing in the world? So, for example, if you desired a specific person, a loving, committed relationship with a specific person, well, in that case, like, what does it feel like? And what would it be like as that version of us who is in that long-term loving, committed relationship? How would that feel? What would be the beliefs and assumptions that you hold, right, from that state? You know, probably somebody who feels, confident in themselves, somebody who feels deeply safe and secure in themselves, somebody who feels loved unconditionally, somebody who feels blessed for this amazing relationship where there's, open communication and mutual respect. Get clear on that version of you, not just on the desire themselves, or the desire itself. I hope that makes sense. How do I manifest someone new? I have qualities written down. I don't have a specific guy in mind I want to create from scratch. Good question. So if you're manifesting a new relationship and you already have the qualities in mind, you've already gotten a clear idea of what that person looks like and shows up as, start imagining what it would be like to be with them. Like, what would be, for example, talking to your friends and family about how you met this new amazing person and how they make you feel amazing and how much fun you two have together. Um, those were always kind of my go-tos, like those kinds of inner conversations, because they would feel amazing. And that way, like, because we don't have like a specific face in mind per se. I mean, if you do, then that's great. But if we don't know what they look like exactly, um, that's one way that we can begin to put ourselves in the place of being somebody who is in a loving, committed relationship. Like, where would you want to go with this person? Do you want to travel? Do you want to, um, are there goals and aspirations that you have together? Just these ideas, and start to really construct that world in imagination. Yeah. Hi, Missy. I didn't know you were on today. I know. I'm usually on Sundays. My apologies. Next week we'll be back to our usual scheduled time. I'm trying to manifest a certain amount of money. Oh, and it's taking so long to manifest in the 3D. How do you manifest instantly without anxiety, worry, or stress? Uh, yeah, yeah, no, I know it can feel incredibly difficult, especially if we're feeling pressed for something. Something feels urgent, um, which is only going to increase the anxiety. And I completely understand that. Um, but one thing that we have to practice doing, and it's a practice without question, but one thing that we have to practice doing is not giving our attention to the 3D. Like, continuing to look for it and continuing to bring up into awareness the absence of it. The I don't have it, where is it? Why is it not here yet? And again, I know it's not always the easiest thing. Sometimes we can't help it. Um, but that's why we have to continue practicing shaping and molding the internal world, continuing to go within, um, because it's going to show up when you're no longer looking for it, and that's the paradox of the law. Because if we're looking for something, that in and of itself is implying that we don't have it. That's saying quite loudly and clearly, I don't have this thing. I am absence of this thing, right? Um, the other thing that I strongly recommend is introduce, if you haven't already, introduce techniques and exercises to help alleviate anxiety, like physiologically, right? Like there's things that we can do to help us naturally induce a more relaxed state and lower cortisol levels, lower stress levels, lower adrenaline levels, basically help us to shut off the fight or flight response. Um, I would be making sure, breathing exercises, meditations, if there's guided meditations that help you to feel better, if there's, activities that help you to feel better, if there's, music playlists that you can make to help you, feel more relaxed and feel more at ease, whatever that looks like. But because when we are anxious and when we are in a state that feels very anxious and very urgent or very a lot of pressure with it from there it's going to feel damn near impossible to maintain that state of the wish fulfilled, right? Yeah. But the reason it takes so long is because we're continuing to try to look for it. Yeah. Yeah, I know it is not it doesn't tend to come instinctively to a lot of us to just ignore the 3D or pay less attention to the 3D. We're very, very, very conditioned to the 3D circumstances. I mean, our entire lives, that's what we've been brought to believe, that that's the real world. That's, the be all end all. So not saying it's something that comes simply and naturally at first. It gets easier. It gets much easier, but yeah. Um, Is it required to do sats? Can I just imagine in daytime too and get results? Absolutely, you can imagine in the daytime. Mhm, yeah, and I wanna be clear, I do emphasize and talk a lot about sats, yes, but it's not the only technique that's gonna like, I'm not saying that you have to use it or it's not gonna work or anything like that, but we can also apply sats during the day. We can induce the drowsy state even in the daytime hours. Yeah, not an issue. Not an issue. Hi, Missy. Do you have an opinion on habit trackers when changing self-concept? Does tracking a new habit for, say, 90 days keep us focused on the old self instead of being in the desired version now? Um, Habit trackers. Do you mean, is that giving our attention too much to the old state? Well, I'd say if using something that aids you in maintaining a new habit, I would say that that's a good thing, right? Um, because we're creatures of habit naturally. So if there's something that is helping you to remind yourself or remember to maintain that new state or go back to that new state, I don't I don't see an issue with that. I feel torn between accountability and being the person who is the new habits already. Got you. I mean, yes, as much and as often as we're able to, we want to imagine ourselves being that person already, right? Um, in imagination. But if we do find ourselves going back to that old story or we catch ourselves reacting and responding to that old story, um, I mean, that's it certainly happens and it's okay. Um, I guess I would say if you find the habit tracker to be helpful in reminding you or aiding you in going back to the end, living in the end, I would do so. Yeah. Where was that? What are common reasons that we might know the limiting beliefs we have, affirm for our new story, but a year goes by and we're still stuck believing the limiting beliefs? Yeah. So, what might it mean if we know the limiting beliefs, we've been aiming to change them, but they haven't changed? Um, if you're noticing that you're still responding and reacting from that old state of consciousness, um, I would play around maybe with different ways of imagining, maybe different methods or techniques. Um, what we're aiming to do in using imagination in aiding us to leave that subconscious impression, right? We want to be able to reach the subconscious mind because the beliefs and assumptions we have are what we operate from unconsciously, subconsciously. So we want to be able to get to the subconscious mind here. So I would maybe, if affirmations, if despite saying affirmations, you're not noticing much change in yourself in forming the new beliefs, maybe play around with other ways of imagining, and make sure that you are taking advantage of that window before bed, getting into the drowsy state. Um, Hi, Mina. I am on a day early. Yes, Saturday edition. Um, Hey, Missy, I manifested third party away and I've been celebrating it in my mind. Could that potentially bring her back? Awesome. Awesome. I mean, naturally, there'd be a bit of celebration going on. Uh, Absolutely. But I mean, the ultimate question that you want to come back to is what are the thoughts, feelings, and reactions that come up when I think about my person? What are the natural thoughts, feelings, and reactions that come up for me when I think about my person? And does it line up with my desired end? Like, am I thinking and reacting naturally as I would be as if we were already in a relationship? And that's kind of the gauge that we can use. Much love to you too. Are there signs as to when your manifestation is just about to show up? Usually not. No. We really I know we're in the habit of looking for signs. We want evidence, we want proof. We want to see some kind of indication that something is working out here. Um, Signs always follow. Signs follow. They do not precede, which basically means that we're not going to see signs that our manifestation is coming before it's here, right? And I made a video about that a little while back if you wanted to get more information about that. Um, yeah, this is a habit that I really encourage people to break. Is that if we continue to occupy and look for signs, we're going to continue to manifest signs. Not much else. What do you resonate with more, law of assumption or law of attraction? Because a lot of coaches make law of attraction seem out of reach and assumption as a secondary or don't mention it. Um, as a secondary, I mean, law of assumption. Yeah. On my channel, I don't teach the law of attraction. I know some may say that they're similar or just, different names for the same thing. There are similarities between the two philosophies, of course, um, but where they differ is huge. It is huge. Biggest one is with the law of assumption, there is no co-creator. There's no like universe giving you things. It's all stemming from self, right? Like, we are the operant power. That there is no force or anything outside of us that has power over us. Just as an example, but that's a big one, right? Um, a lot of coaches make law of attraction seem out of reach. I don't. I have not watched any or read any law of attraction coaches in a long time, so I couldn't answer any of that. But um, yeah, there's important distinctions between the two philosophies. I was a student of the law of attraction for a decade or so before I found Neville. It was night and day. Can you get in the habit of manifesting signs? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Ask me how I know. Hmm. Um, Let me see. Do you know info of subliminals or like listening to too much subliminals not a good idea, or the topics of affirmations, etc. Um, I mean, as far as subliminals go, it's like any technique. There's people that swear by them. There's people that swear they've had a lot of success with them. For any technique, does not matter the technique. If it helps you and aids you in experiencing and feeling into that desired outcome, going to the end, that's what you want to look out for. That's what you want to note. Um, oh, I'm so sorry, Jane. My dad has been in the hospital for years. He has very extreme symptoms, and I have to accompany him. What do I do? Yeah. How do we deal with extreme 3D circumstances? Yeah, I know this can feel incredibly difficult, especially when we're consistently noting the 3D. It's something that we're constantly having to experience. I know it can feel especially challenging them. Number one, I would be putting my focus right now as much on the manifestation and the desired manifestation. I would be making sure that you are also building your faith and trust in the law. Like really making sure that you are testing this, that you are observing the correlation and the relationship between the inner world and the outer world, so that you can begin to naturally assume and naturally believe, right? You can naturally start to see the law of assumption is real. Once you begin to be more and more aware of that relationship between the inner and outer world, and that the 3D truly is a mirror, the more we have faith and trust in that, the less attached we are to the 3D, whatever it looks like. Whatever it looks like. Yeah. Um, you know, secondly, I would be as much and as often as you get the opportunity to do so, go within and imagine. Go within and imagine, and making sure that you're revising the day every day. If the day did not go as planned, if the day brought with it things that were not ideal, things that were upsetting, revising them every day. Yeah. Those two are the main things. When dealing with extreme 3D circumstance and, you know, feeling like that's really testing us and that's putting a lot of pressure on us, the best things and the biggest things that we can do is making sure that we are building our faith in this so that we can buy the pearl and that we are revising. Yeah. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can you recreate an SP entirely? Their personality, behavior, likes, what they do and don't. Can you change them to have a complete 180 in every aspect? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yeah. Because there's already a version of your SP with all the personality, behaviors, all the things that you desire to see, that there's already that version of him that exists. There's already a version of that person that exists. Right? Yeah. I've personally experienced that too. I've seen people that I've known for years, my entire damn life, make complete 180s in how they showed up, how they acted, how they treated me, the whole works. Absolutely, you can. What do you think of the knot technique? I was asked the same question last week. And from what I gathered, the knot technique is referring to Neville Goddard's ladder exercise. Like, I will not climb a ladder. Um, so if all we're doing is saying that we're not going to do something in hopes that the subconscious mind will miss that and give us the thing that we want because it doesn't pick up on the word not, I think that's what it means. Correct me if I'm wrong. More importantly is the beliefs and assumptions versus like what we are just saying in the day to day. The purpose of the ladder technique was to show that the subconscious mind is more powerful than the conscious thinking mind. That was the whole point of the ladder exercise. He was trying to show his followers the law of reversed effort and the power of the law of reversed effort. If we go to bed every night imagining ourselves and experiencing ourselves climbing a ladder, then despite the day to day whatever we're saying, we're still going to wind up climbing a ladder, right? I hope that makes sense. Yeah, as I've noticed a couple questions about signs in here. A couple people have questions about signs and, does signs mean this or that? I mean, number one, a sign means whatever means whatever we assume that it means. Uh, but signs do not come before the manifestation itself. Like we're not going to see signs that something is about to happen. It's just going to happen. You're just one minute you're not on the bridge, and then you are on the bridge. It's like that, right? But the reason we don't want to get ourselves fixated on signs is because then we're just continuing to see an outpicturing of signs and not what we actually desire, right? Check out the video I made about signs. That was something that came dominantly from the law of attraction teachings. That's very much a law of attraction teaching, like asking the universe for signs. It's a trap. It's a trap. I feel the same about birds before land. Yeah, I mean, birds before land. It's just. I'm pretty sure it's the same thing as signs. I think. Where was my spot? How can I stop my ego mind from taking over? I really try not to argue with my SP in my head, but I struggle with this. Yeah, yeah. This is something that I would argue most people deal with initially. Initially, this is a really common thing, unfortunately, that we do because I mean, number one, the ego's job is self-preservation. It is preserving that self and all the beliefs and assumptions that come with it. That is sort of our defense mechanism, how we make sense of this world, right? I mean, the ego serves it has a huge job in it and it serves a huge purpose, but it can also be an annoying pain in the ass, for sure. Um, Ultimately, the reason that we're noticing these things coming up for us is because we have these beliefs and assumptions, right? That's why we don't have control over our intrusive thoughts because they're subconscious. Like all of this is stemming from the subconscious mind. So trying to battle them through conscious efforts with the thinking mind is going to feel damn near impossible to do. Um, which is why the root of what we're doing here is changing the beliefs, changing the assumptions, right? Changing the concept of self. That when the self concept changes, the thoughts change, the reactions change, everything changes. Not just on the outside, but how we feel, how we're going to naturally assume, how we're going to naturally react, the natural thoughts that come up for us. All of that changes when the beliefs and assumptions change, right? Which is the entire point of using the imagination. Our imagination is how we change our beliefs. So we stop the ego mind by means of subconscious impression, by means of changing the beliefs. I'm very broad stroking here, but yeah, check out my Manifestation Fundamentals playlist if you haven't yet. It kind of goes more into the nitty gritty of all of that. Oh, Hello, Synergy and Source. Good to see you again. It's been a while. Where was I am lost. I am lost in the chat. How to deal with hot and cold behavior from SP? Good question. I know that this is also something that we can grapple with, that can feel difficult to do. Hot and cold behavior from a person is reflection of our own hot and cold behavior internally. It's our double-mindedness being reflected back to us, basically. Um, so, again, the aim with changing those beliefs and assumptions is that we are no longer double-minded. We're no longer battling ourselves and going back and forth our own hot and cold behavior, and thus we do not continue to see that outpictured. First thing that I would be doing and taking note, though, is if they're showing up cold, if they're showing up in a way that's not ideal, make sure that you're revising it. Especially if it's something that you're noticing a reaction to. If you're reacting to something strongly and it's not good, it's not ideal, make sure that you are revising it. Make sure that you are uprooting any of those unwanted seeds, so to speak. Yeah. As we change, we're going to notice our own behavior changing, and we're going to notice that being reflected in 3D. The 3D is the last thing to be reflected, just to be clear. Perhaps a self-inquiry would help some of your viewers as well who are struggling with intrusive thoughts. Yes, I am coming out with a video soon about self-inquiry. Absolutely. That one is going to be incredibly beneficial for a lot of people in this community, no doubt. Thank you for the super chat, Clarity. Florence Scovel Shinn wrote about darkness before dawn. Is that another limiting belief? Oh, that things get bad before they get better? Yeah. Because that's not inherently true. That's not truth with a capital T, right? That may be people's experience. There may be instances where it did get worse before it got better. So I'm not saying that that's never happened or can't be true in cases, but it's not always the case that it gets worse before it gets better. Yeah, that's an assumption. And thank you, Casey. Thank you for the super chat. How can we stay in the wish fulfilled state? I have noticed that I'm doing well, and then I go back into the old state, even when I'm doing my techniques. This is normal. This is normal. One thing that, and I should probably make a video emphasizing this. Watch my video about ego backlash if you haven't yet. But I should make another video because this question has come up, a number of times. When we are just getting familiar with a new state of consciousness, like we're just getting familiar with, these new beliefs, assumptions, experiences that we're having in imagination, we may not occupy them permanently at first. In fact, if it's a very new concept, if it's a new state that we're not familiar with, it's likely that we're going to fall out of that state. Because one thing that we're always doing subconsciously is gravitating to whatever dominant state we've been occupying. We're used to going back to home base inevitably. Like, you can think of the ego as like this well-regulated machine that's always trying to keep a homeostasis. It's always trying to keep us at that dominant state, right? With the most dominant beliefs, assumptions that we hold. So if we are occupying something new entirely that's unfamiliar, it's likely that we may find ourselves falling out of it or reverting back. Initially, it's not always going to be the case, but that is an initial thing that we might notice, which is where the whole persistence thing comes from. The whole point of persistence is persist in going back into that state, that desired state, if you fall out of it, and continue to go back there until that new desired state becomes the new dominant state, right? So the more that we find ourselves going back there, the more natural and familiar this new state will feel to you, and the less often you're going to wind up moving back out of it until inevitably you're not moving out of it anymore. Yeah, think homeostasis, but definitely check out the ego backlash video if you have not seen it yet. You are so welcome, Jane. You are so welcome. All right, I got time for maybe one or two more. Hi, Missy. It's Carrie from London. I wanted to say that the meditation you told me to do on self-inquiry and just asking who am I has helped a lot with all of this. Good. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Also, hi. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. Do we need to force ourselves to let go to manifest? No. 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 Don't try to force yourself to do anything. None of this should be done through effort or force or willpower. No. It's going to feel very, very, very difficult, if not impossible, to force ourselves to let go. Like, has it been effective before when somebody told us to just get over someone that we really liked, or when somebody said, "Oh, just get over it"? Like, no, it doesn't work like that. Mm-mm. Detachment is something that's going to happen naturally. That will happen naturally and on its own as we become more familiar and more grounded in that desired state of consciousness. The new beliefs, the new assumptions, the new self, we are going to naturally detach or let go of old fears, doubts, all the things that were holding us back before. But it's a very effortless process. Don't try to force it. I'm off to practice voodoo on my SP. John, come on now. You have a wonderful day, sir. Be good. Be good. Thank you for being here. The ladder technique worked for me in an unimaginable way. Yup. Yup. And that's usually as far as the bridge unfolding, it will show up in a way that we could have not ever consciously conceived. It's going to do so in a way that's like dumbfounding, which is why we absolutely don't need to worry about the how, because we could never consciously conceive how things are going to show up for us, how things are going to unfold for us. We are never going to know. Thank you to everyone here for your openness and willingness to explore new ways of being. Well said, Jane. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. It can be scary to open ourselves up to something so unfamiliar and new, and sometimes even scary. Mad respect to all y'all. Sincerely. Don't encourage him, JT. God. Oh my God, great reveal. Oh my God. You didn't have to go to a shelter. That is amazing. Concept needed to manifest using is self-concept needed. What to is line up with specific person. Yes, we want our work. What can we set? So and I ended up in a reality where my friend just didn't ask me to leave anymore. So now I know I live in my apartment. I am so happy for you. I am so happy for you. I don't know, for those who may not have been here last week, there was, a lot of struggle against the 3D that was going on. A lot of really terrible circumstances that looked inevitable, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen. At the 11th hour, no less. Because that's usually when things will show up or change, is at the 11th hour. I love to see that. I love to hear that. Thank you so much for updating. That's incredible. That is incredible. And congrats on your new apartment. I love that so much. So much. On that note, you guys, unfortunately, I do got to wrap it up for today. 10 million different things to do as per usual, but thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for being here for another round of Q&A, Saturday edition. Next week, we will be back to our usual scheduled programming on Sundays. I hope you guys can join me next week. My apologies if I did not get to your question today, but rest assured, I come on here every week. So I hope to see you back. Keep eyes out for the video coming up tomorrow, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend. All of you. Much love. Take care. Be good to yourselves. Mwah.